Hey everybody, and welcome to this, month's episode, because we haven't talked for a while, of Ask Kate. And for those of you who don't know Kate, Kate is the author of How to Heal Your Metabolism. She lives all the way over the other side of the world. What time is it there?
So far.
Yeah.
It is 3:20.
3:20.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And yeah, we sell her book and we sell lots of copies of her book. So if you haven't read it, it's a really, I think, great and easy to understand summary of like Ray's work and other people. But I think it's just much easier to consume and understand for the average Joe like me. So today we wanted to talk about dairy and calcium, because I find, and you'd probably be the same, Kate, we have a lot of women coming into our program, and I used to be one of them, and I was so anti-dairy. I think the fitness industry had brainwashed me to think that dairy was inflammatory, that it would make me fat because it was high and had sugar in it. And I mean, I used to drink almond milk. I wouldn't eat yogurt. I wouldn't eat cheese. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, do you get that too? Do you get a lot of clients coming in just brainwashed about dairy?
Yeah, I think it's the majority of people. I mean, in the industry, health and fitness, nutritional world, dairy is considered like an anti-food. If you go into and I live in Southern California, and of course all the rages are raw foods and juicing and so forth, and everything is no dairy, no dairy, no dairy, and it's all filled with some sort of almond milk or cashew milk or any other sort of a plant-based milk product, which just so you know, are not milks. Those are like nut juices at the best, but they're not milk. Needless to say, the industries have scared people away from drinking dairy. And a lot of it is, a lot of people drink dairy and have a negative effect, whether they're lactose intolerant or think they're lactose intolerant, or they just don't digest it very well. And so from that, they're saying milk is bad for me. And for some people, milk isn't that great for them initially, and they shouldn't be consuming high amounts of it. Maybe there's certain types that they need to start with, or if you haven't been consuming dairy in a while, it's not wise to start consuming copious amounts of dairy. Your body isn't ready to process and digest it. Usually if you haven't been consuming dairy for a while, your body probably has stopped producing lactase, the enzyme that breaks down the sugar, lactose in milk, and it's produced in the small intestine. So for those people, you're going to have some gut issues if you start consuming something with lactase in it. So, the advice is either start consuming dairy products that don't have a lot of it, the milk sugar in it, maybe like start with a cheese or even some yogurt, or even a whole fat milk in very small dosage. And that would start somebody off that hasn't been consuming, any dairy or has an adverse reaction to dairy.
And so before we sort of dive into the bit deeper into, why people, have issues with consuming milk, I just wanted you to talk a bit about, why do you think that the fitness industry is so against milk and dairy? Like what, like you and I were just talking about this client, or not a client, someone commented on one of my posts. And I think, there's a couple of sides. Yeah, I know I've got my coffee with milk and sugar. One is, there's the humanitarian side, I think. And, of course you want the animals to be treated well and, support local farms. I think that's probably one side of it. Sure. But why is it that people think that it is, I mean, I used to think, it's really high in sugar. That was one thing, because I was like against sugar. But why is it that I always see people saying it's inflammatory. Milk is inflammatory. Why do they think that? Like, why do you think the fitness industry has this thing about milk being inflammatory?
Well, I think it's because a lot of people have gut issues. I mean, the modern world diet, American diet, industrialized diet is inflammatory. So most people have some sort of gut issue going on, or intestinal inflammation or bacteria in the gut. And so adding something like milk into their diet without healing their gut, they're probably going to not feel well, and it's going to produce those effects. But we have to understand what's really going on versus just thinking, just because I added this food, that food is inflammatory. It's not the food, or unless you're consuming a degraded milk product, which could be causing the problem. The quality of milk is important. Where the milk comes from is important. and everybody is different. So you have to find a product that works for you. You know, I have a client that can't consume cow's milk. It doesn't work for her. She can consume buffalo's milk though. She can consume sheep's milk, but cow's milk doesn't work, you know, and she's tried it again and again and again in different ways, you know, and it presently it just doesn't work for her. Now she goes into France, you know, then that milk seems to work for her. But where she's at, her cow's milk doesn't work. So, you know, we have to find out what's going to work for us. But what's most important is we need to know the benefits, why we're consuming dairy and why it's such an important part of our diet. So that we aren't so scared of it, because people are like, well, why do I need that? You know, I don't need, you know, no other animal. No other animal still consumes milk. It's just human beings, and we're consuming the milk of another animal. It's just not normal.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm like, well, we're the only mammal to fly fucking planes. So it's like, you know, that argument is just stupid. Like, it's just, you know, it's crazy. And I think, you know what, I was going to jump in before, and one thing that I didn't know until I started to learn more about this and eat this way is that lactase, the enzyme that breaks down lactose, is actually made in your intestinal walls. So when you have digestive issues or they're inflamed, you know, that can inhibit the production. So we often find, what you mentioned before, is that when women come in and they have, you know, they've been eating diets high in green vegetables, nuts, seeds, polyunsaturated fats, their digestive tract is usually super, super inflamed. And when we take those things out, they start eating, you know, like just the ripe fruits and bone broths. And after a period of time, they can reintroduce milk and cheese. And then eventually, like, we've got clients who can drink 2 liters of milk a day with no issues. So I think often people go, oh, I drink milk and I have a bad reaction, but they don't look at the underlying issue. I think. Would you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with you. Of course. Yeah. Because we always look at the instantaneous reaction of how our body responds. And that's not a bad thing. I mean, we should be paying attention to how our body responds. And if consuming milk is causing you to have a negative reaction, I'm not telling you to go just push through that. That's not what I'm saying here. You probably need to do some healing before you introduce the milk back in. So it's just letting you know you're not ready yet. It doesn't mean you should never have it. You should have it. It is a quality food that should be in everyone's diet. Well, and let me take that back. Maybe not everyone's, depending on your culture and the rest of your life. Milk is an anti-stress food. In cultures that don't have a lot of stress, let's say they live off the land, they're not in an industrialized nation, there's not constant stress around them, they can certainly get by with a lot less calcium in their diet and don't have the ramifications of something like you or me that live in this world, you know, that's constantly stressing us. So for those cultures, you know, and like I said, people argue. There's people like the Japanese or Okinawanese that don't consume tons of dairy, but they do get calcium in other forms, whether it's from bones or bone broths, and they also live in a different world than we do. You know, I mean, so we have to take everything in consideration and not just look at one culture or one isolated saying, well, they don't need it, so I don't need it. Well, they're not living in your world. And, you know, based on the fact of all the things that milk can do and the fact that, you know, a high calcium diet is a very anti-stress diet. And in our world, we need to do everything we can to decrease stress. So a diet that is low stress would be more ideal than one that's going to stress our system more.
So can you talk more about, let's talk about calcium. So like we talk about why do we love dairy so much? Well, it's high calcium content. And, you know, I think like, and I didn't know this either, is that, you know, because people, I see these, not that I ever comment and just, you know, I scroll past them, but writing that you don't need calcium, that your body doesn't need calcium, you know, like, can you talk to people about what calcium is and what its function is in the body and what happens when you don't get adequate calcium?
Well, I mean, I think we all know, I mean, calcium makes up about 99% of your bone. So that's pretty important. And, you know, there's a constant transfer of calcium between the cells and the blood and the bone that goes on all day long. And your body doesn't produce its own calcium. So for you, that's constantly in that cycle, you need to be ingesting calcium so that that cycle continues correctly. If not, in a low calcium diet, you're going to increase the parathyroid hormone, which is going to tell your body to break down bones to get calcium to regulate through the blood or the cells or however it's needed. So we need that now in a low stress environment that doesn't require as much of that turnover. They might not need as much, and there's certainly cultures that have survived on lower calcium. Now, I'm not sure what the longevity is of those cultures, but there are cultures that can survive on that. And again, you can get calcium in other forms if you're consuming a lot of things like bone broth, or eating the bones of fish, which some places do. You can get it those ways. Personally, I prefer to get it in dairy source, and in a milk product, it's coming with other things that are going to help the absorption of calcium, whether it's vitamin D. Sugar helps with the absorption of calcium. You also have other minerals like magnesium, selenium, vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin K. So it's a food that is so high in nutrition and provides, like I said, it's the best source of calcium that, it's just imperative to keep it into your diet.
Yeah, I just love milk too. Like I remember when I first did the program with Emma Skrouskas, and, because before that I was drinking my black coffee, with no sugar. And when when I was like, okay, milk's okay. And I started to learn about it, and just having lattes again with milk and sugar, it's just amazing. And cheese is just so yummy too.
I know. I know. I mean, I was like you. I didn't consume dairy for 2-3 years at least, and it was all the almond milk, and I'm sure I drank soy milk at some point. All of those fake milks, and it was, and that was in a time when I was calorie deficient and all these other things, and my body was stressed to the max. So. And the point is, I guess, ultimately, if you look at the research and you look at the ultimate studies of milk, it's going to show you how people are thinner that consume milk. It shows better BMI. But people have lower levels of different cancers, diabetes, metabolic syndrome. So many things are attributed to high milk consumption. And, and so we need to pay attention to those things. Plus, people live longer lives that are drinking milk.
And you know what? I think it's just such a, like we in our program get a lot of mums with kids, so they're even more under the pump than me.
Sure.
And I think that milk and cheese, it's such a great snack. Like for me, when I'm not busy, but like if I have to go somewhere, I'll just get 3 Baby Bell cheeses and I'll pack 100 grams of dates and off I go. It's just so easy. I'll have a couple of glasses of milk and I'll just eat condensed milk or have a piece of fruit or a bowl of fruit. And it's just such a quick, easy, convenient snack that hits all the macros, packed with nutrients, and you don't have to prepare it.
Nope. You can have a cup of milk. I mean, that alone is easy to go to, while you're having a video conference.
Totally.
When you need calories. But you're right. I mean, it's easy, you can make a smoothie, you could put some honey, some chocolate, make chocolate milk. I mean, there's so many things you can do and make it easy for yourself. Or just like I said, drink a cup of milk with some sugar in it. I mean, there's nothing better than that. And, I know people are like, oh, dear God, you're going to put sugar in the milk. I'm like, yeah.
Oh, I know.
It makes it so much better. And your body needs it because it balances it a little bit better because, I mean, milk is so awesome because it is providing you carbohydrates, protein, and a little bit of fat.
Now let's talk about, because we were sort of talking about this before we did the call, but, we get varying levels of clients in our program. Some have earned a lot of money, some who don't earn a lot of money. And, our recommendation is always, here is what's the absolute best, but just do what your budget can afford. So if you're trying to feed a big family and, let's talk about absolute best quality dairy and then, going down the ladder and just, at the end of the day, it's about, like say, doing what your budget can afford.
Yeah, it's doing what your budget can afford, and it's also doing what your body likes best because, I've shifted, what I think is best because, again, what I've learned is I used to say raw, organic milk is probably the healthiest, the whole organic, right? Because there's no additives in there.
Yeah.
It hasn't been heated. It hasn't been homogenized. So it hasn't been degraded, as some of the other milk products. However, some people don't do very well on raw, organic whole milk, especially it does have a lot of fat in it. So they might do better on a lower fat milk, or they might do better on a pasteurized, which is just a heated milk.
Yeah.
So again, it comes down to what works best to you. Some people do great on cow's milk, others don't. Some people need something like buffalo or goat. It seems to be easier on a lot of systems. You know, it does taste a little bit different. But again, you know, I don't want to ever say this is the best milk, and if you want the best milk, this is what you should have, because that milk might not work for you. It's finding the one that's going to work for you. Now, I would always say, you know, definitely try to get an organic variety, you know, one that has pastured cows or sheep or whatever it's coming from, versus a conventionally farmed, you know, milk product, because those are usually going to be grain fed, and so the milk quality is going to be a little bit different. So, but essentially, like you said, you know, you have to go with whatever's in your budget. And what also you like, you know, obviously if you don't like goat's milk, you're not going to drink it. So find what's going to work for you that way, you know, and also how does your body respond? If your body responds great and it feels good to you, then then consume that milk, you know, and again, try different ones. I sometimes go and get raw milk, and sometimes I go and get, you know, non-homogenized. I mean, I change it up. I seem to respond. I'm fine with most milks. I don't seem to have any.
Yeah.
You know, some taste a little bit different. Sometimes I just want some whole milk. I'm just like, I crave it. I want it. I make a smoothie with it. Yeah. When I start drinking a lot more, though, I can't go super, you know, raw milk all the time. So I go for a lower 1% variety, and that might be the rest of my milk for the day.
Yeah. And that's, I get a lot of women ask me, you know, Kitty, so should I be drinking low fat or high fat? And you know, we have quite a structured process, because, you know, people are coming to us, they want to feel better, but, you know, like we're all about strength training and getting strong and body composition change. And so, you know, I always say to them, it's, well, one, like you said, it's what you like, but also, you know, it's not that the fat's bad. It's just that too much fat is too much calories. So for me to get the amount of calcium I need in a day, if I drink a liter of full fat milk, I'll be eating bloody like 100 grams of fat a day, which means that it's just too many calories. For me, I don't need that many fat calories, you know. So our women in the program, we're like, okay, well, here's your budget for the day. If you're tracking things, so it's like, you just need to play around with it. It's what you like. It's what you can fit in your budget. So, you know, if we've got this homemade chocolate brownie recipe, which has quite a bit of butter in it. So that obviously uses up quite a high amount of my fat budget for the day. So therefore I'll drink skim milk. But some days I'll have, like you say, if I really feel like full fat milk, I'll have I'll go and get a full fat latte. So I think would you agree with that?
I think that's a great point, right? And, you know, and if you ever read, you know, Dr. Pete's work, I mean, he would consume a gallon of milk a day. And he says, well, now I only consume 2 quarts because he's getting older. So I used to consume a gallon. And I remember when I first read that, I was like, who consumes a gallon of milk a day? This man is insane, you know? And I mean, but.
How much is a gallon in liters? How much is it? How many? I don't know.
3 liters. About 3 liters.
Do you know what? Some of the coaches in our gym, Jake and Bo, for a period of time, they were having a little competition about who could drink the most milk. So like within their diet budget, they would be. So I think at one point they were both drinking like 3 liters of light milk a day. Also too, because it's easy for them, because they make it chocolate because they're in and out of classes and on their feet all day. So it's just easy. They can go in, drink the milk, but they're young men, you know, like.
Almost 4 liters are in a gallon.
Oh my God. That's incredible.
Yeah, that's a lot of milk. But, you know, needless to say, so he never drank whole fat. He always had 1 or 2% milk because it was just too much fat, you know. And so when you are consuming high amounts, you know, I don't know anyone that's drinking a gallon of milk, you know, that would be really challenging. But I do definitely have people that drink a liter or 2 a day. And even for them, and depending on what their goals are. Now, if you're just looking to maintain weight and get healthy, then whole fat, you could be totally fine for you. You could probably utilize more fat. You know, I mean, when you're trying to maintain body weight, you can have higher fat and be totally fine if that's what works for your station. However, if you're healthy enough to actually start losing weight, and I mean that because you need to build that foundation first before trying to lose the weight. You know, at that point of time, when you get to that health, you can do a little calorie reduction by doing a lower fat milk, but still having a high calcium intake.
And you know what I really find too, like I've sort of tested for a long time and tracked things. And for me, you know, my fat between sort of 60 to 70 grams daily works, and then having higher carbs like pushing the carbs higher and keeping the protein. For me, 150 is about good, you know, because we obviously heavy strength, 150 grams a day of protein. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Like fat. Okay.
Yeah. No. And keeping the fat for me between 60 to 70. And then I just have higher carbs, and that's
Right.
the work for me. And I think I've tested lots of, like say, test and measure. It's testing and measuring. But I think, you know, like we never recommend that the women have too low fat, because it's just, it keeps you full too. I think it's that balance of, you know, I just find they seem to sit anywhere between 50 to 70, depending on their goals and their metabolism. Like the higher their metabolism, the more active they are, they can tend to have a bit more fat. Like I've had women eating up to 90 grams of fat a day, but they strength train 4 days a week, and they're quite active. And I think, like you say, it's your goals and just testing and measuring.
Yeah, it is what works for you. And fat does help keep you more satiated. You know, that is something that it does, and it actually lowers sugar into your body, you know. So if you're not utilizing sugars very well, you know, having some more fat in your diet is actually going to be helpful to you. But someone that really, you know, starts utilizing a lot of energy can get away with lower fat and consuming tons of carbohydrates, you know, because that's what's utilizing and burning through their system, and they do just fine. But they have to eat a lot of food normally. So again, it's all depending on the person and what works for them, and because, you know, and how their body is functioning at that time.
And just to finish off, can you talk about, so like if the viewers are watching this and they're like, okay, well look, I drink milk and I eat dairy and I just get heaps of issues. Where would you start? Like what would you tell them to do?
So first thing is, you know, you have to look at your overall diet, and, you know, if milk, you seem to be causing inflammation, that means you have probably something going on in the gut. So it's important to remove the foods that could be causing you gut distress. And that is the hard to digest foods, nuts, seeds, anything with the polyunsaturated oils in it, you know, probably leafy green vegetables or raw food, legumes. Those type of foods cause a lot of gut disturbance. So getting rid of those foods, and also your processed foods or fast foods or just complete crappy foods, get those out of your diet. And then start, you know, once you feel that you have a little bit, because, you know, those are the people that always have that gut bloat, or I used to have it. Always had this bloat going on because things weren't digesting properly. Once that gets under the control, then start adding dairy in slowly. You might want to start with a cheese to see how well your body, you know, is using it. And if the cheese is okay, maybe add a tablespoon of yogurt and see how the body responds to that. Then if that's okay, try a whole milk first. That usually is the easiest to digest because it hasn't been degraded and it doesn't have, you know, additives into it. And literally an ounce or two. That's it. Like, don't be drinking cups and cups of milk, and try that for a week. And then if your body's okay, then slowly start adding a little bit more. But by doing it, that slow process, usually you can start turning on, you know, that small intestine or however it was making, you know, that enzyme that will start producing it again, so it can start digesting the milk better. But, you know, take a week, couple weeks to a month and go into that process slowly, and you'll find that you can start using and digesting milk much better. But people that are in a really damaged state usually don't do very well on milk, and so it's best to usually wait a little bit. You can like clean up your diet and clean up your gut until you start adding it back in.
One last thing, and I just remembered one more thing, is that when we talked about this, is that, you know, clients in our program will get them to download Chronometer and track a day or two of food, and they can actually see how many milligrams of calcium that they're getting. Now, what would you recommend as to someone as a minimum amount of calcium they should be getting a day at a minimum? Because I know it's going to range.
I would, depending on the person, probably around 1,500 milligrams. I mean, some people might go a little bit less if they're smaller. I mean, obviously, you know, if you are just starting off and you come from a low calorie diet, you're not going to hit those numbers. It's going to take you a little bit of time because, you know, if you're starting with 1,200 calories, and you might be because that's what you've been eating, and you're starting to work yourself up, then, you know, you might be more around that 1,000, you know, milligram range. So, you know, I think a good goal is, you know, something that you can utilize until you start pulling the calories up, is to use eggshell calcium as a dietary supplement. You know, a quarter teaspoon is about 200 milligrams of calcium. So adding that in a couple times during the day can be used as kind of a supplement until you start eating more. So that's one way to kind of bridge the gap. But yeah, I would say minimum around 15. I mean, a lot of the research says higher than that. I mean, I find it's really hard to get, more than 1,500, 2,000 unless you're consuming a lot of calories. If you're consuming a couple liters of milk, you're good. A cup of milk is about 350 milligrams of calcium. So you're usually fine. And if you're consuming cheese and other foods, you're having no problem getting it. But yeah, a good goal I think would be around 1,500 milligrams.
One last thing, because I just thought of something else is, what about these people because I see people write on Facebook and they're like, yeah, but you can get calcium from other foods, like green vegetables contain some calcium. What is the issue around the calcium in that form, and is it actually available to the body to digest?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question, because the green leafy vegetables do have a good amount of calcium. Seaweed has a good amount of calcium. The problem with those vegetables, especially in the raw state, they all contain oxalates, and oxalates are going to inhibit, calcium absorption. So that's one of the problems. Now, if you cook those vegetables, the oxalates basically go into the water. So it's an easier way to consume it and get some calcium out of it. So if you're going to, cooking is going to be your best option. And also, again, by cooking it, oxalates are going to go into the water, but also some of the minerals are going into the water as well. So, and that's one thing, if you're consuming a mineral broth based on greens, you're actually not consuming it to get the calcium, because you're probably not going to get much absorption because of the oxalate. It's more to get the magnesium out of that broth. But, so, I don't think they're the best option, obviously. There's too many other factors that are going to inhibit calcium absorption, and everything that comes along with milk is going to increase calcium absorption.
And I think that's probably where I used to, because I was uneducated, is all these people banging on about, oh yeah, but there's calcium in these vegetables and these foods, but there's also other digestive inhibitors that stop your body from absorbing the calcium. So yeah, it's so interesting once you actually start to educate yourself and you test. I always recommend to people, I'm like, just test. And, whether this is right or wrong is I don't read a lot of studies anymore. Like, I just test things on myself, and I measure, like we've talked about before, sleep, digestion, mood, energy, menstrual cycle. Do I feel generally happy? Because I feel happy most of the time. And I know when like we went to a wedding, I don't drink very much anymore, but every now and then, like if we have a special occasion and I had a few drinks and ate some food that obviously I didn't know, you don't know exactly what's in it.
Right.
And, I had not a great sleep, and I woke up the next day and I felt like really flat. Like I can feel it now. And I think, if people can get really in tune with their body, and you'll find what's optimal and what makes you feel really, really good. And then when you don't do that, you'll know, and you'll start to, So it's like, I think just listen to your body and test things. Like, it's not going to fucking kill you,
Well, and I used to tell people, and I still tell people, when you get real healthy, you can think of it like a clear pool. Like a clear pool, when you're real healthy, it's clear, you can see through the pool. When you're really toxic, it's like a dirty pool. And if you're really toxic and you add, a shovel full of dirt into that dirty pool, you can't even notice it. But if you put that dirt into a clear pool, it's highly noticeable, and you really get affected by the toxicities because you're so clean. So it is one of those that you'll definitely notice when your body becomes clean and working properly. When you add some toxicities or bad foods or alcohol, you become a little bit more sensitive to it. Doesn't mean you can't clear it, because you can, but you feel it more, because you're not as toxic. Why do you think like alcoholics can drink alcohol all the time and it doesn't bother them at all, right? There's no hangover involved there, but if I drink a few glasses, I feel it.
Oh, same. I used to be able to just go out, like I took heaps of drugs and partied heaps, like 3-day benders, heaps of booze. I drink bottles. Like I could just, like 3 or 4 bottles a night, plus shots, plus drugs. And now I'll have 2 glasses of wine and I'll feel it the next day. It's amazing. Yeah. It's amazing that the body can heal itself too, because I've really done a lot. I feel like I have,
You and me both, right? I think that you have to go through this learning process. Yeah. I mean, it's not like I've come from a background of health. I haven't. I came back of partying and eating crap, thinking I was lightly, but I mean, how could I have possibly been, the amount of alcohol and stuff I've consumed in my system? But I think that's a good sign. I mean, A, it shows you can recover, and B, that that we can get better, you know, and that it's a learning and growing process. But I mean, if someone was to tell me, I mean, I can't relate to them if they've always been healthy all their life and here they're doing this thing. And I'm like, yeah, but you never destroyed yourself. So, I mean, you have to, and most people have. I guess the point is most people have done some destructive measures in their life. Excessive dieting, restriction, alcohol, drugs, pharmaceuticals, whatever, you know, we're all in this game together. But I mean, you know, I need to know, look, I've been there, I've done it it all.
Everything. I remember when I was 14 and like however old you could be to get your first job, and I went and started working at McDonald's, and I actually really liked it, but I ate McDonald's before my shift, during my shift, and after my shift for like 3-4 years straight.
You were the McDonald's diet.
Yeah. So like, I love those bloody fries, and I'd have I always had the standard like nuggets, big fries, a Coke, an apple pie and ice cream. Like I can't believe that I did that, you know, and that then after that, then the drugs and the partying started and the shit food. And so I'd drink piss all weekend, and on a Sunday I'd smash Domino's pizza and, you know, eat donuts and stuff. So it does really show that, like, and I did that for years, you know, and so if I can recover, you can recover too.
I totally agree with you. 100%.
It's never too late.
And we were just talking because I'm like, Kitty, you know, Kitty's, I got 10 years on her, and I'm like, you know, when I was your age, I was still doing crazy stuff and eating crap, working out like an insane person, you know. So hey, you know, you can do it at any age, and you can you can fix stuff.
That's right. Sure. That's right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else that you want to add that you think that we haven't discussed? I think we probably covered quite a lot.
You know, I think the important thing is that don't be afraid of dairy. You know, we don't know the research on all these plant-based milks. I think it's important to know that. We have tons and tons and tons of research on dairy and milk products. And conclusively, what we've looked at over time is that they have a positive effect on our bodies, on our basal metabolic, or on our BMI, on our bone density. You know, they're helping supportive in different diseases. So we need to look at that research. And again, we understand that these plant-based milks are very new. They're new products. They're industrialized products. We don't know what they're doing and if they're beneficial to us at all. You know, we need to take that into consideration. And if you haven't been doing dairy in a long time, don't jump in and just start consuming copious amounts of milk. You know, start looking at your diet and what you can take out that might be causing you gut inflammation. Add dairy and slowly start with a cheese, maybe like a Parmesan Reggiano, which is pretty easy to digest, and then slowly introduce it. And pay attention, you know, again, if you've been on deprivation for a really long time, you have to add these foods in slowly, especially things like milk or foods that have sugar in them. Because if you do it too quickly, you're going to gain weight and be mad and angry and upset. And you know, again, everything we teach about this process is you got to go slow. You've got to introduce it slow. And, you know, and allow your body to adjust and adapt. And when you understand the food better, you'll be more inclined to use these products and, you know, get the benefit from them.
Awesome. Well, as always, thank you so much, Kate. And I will see you next time.
You got it.
Okay, bye. Bye.